Hey, what's going on, everyone? Let's see. Theo, what is going on? Okay, let me just get everything set up here. Let me know how my audio is. I'm always afraid I never plug these things in thoroughly, and then it kind of doesn't pick up the audio. All right. Okay, so we'll wait a little bit. So you guys, as you guys know, it gets LF. Good to see you. Jerry's in the house. Theo, how you guys doing? So it gets boring just me having to be talking all the time and doing these solos. So I do invite guests on these lives from time to time. And today I'm going to have like a great guest. It's actually a good friend of mine that I met through the Czech Institute many years ago at this point. And he's actually in right now, and I'll let him in the live in a second. But we'll be talking about he was actually obese for a large portion of his life, and he overcame it the honest way, you know. And we'll be covering his story today and his journey, and we'll go from there. So, Jerry, give me a sec. I kind of forgot how to add people here. Let me see. Boom. Okay, here we go. Add. Send invite.
What's up?
Hey, Jerry's in the house. What's up, man?
What's up?
Um,
Just finished my workout.
okay, cool. I actually forgot how to add people. It's been a little while since I had a
I,
guest. I'm like, oh, I
uh,
probably should have. I'll just click around here, and luckily I clicked on the right button, so luck's with me today. But Jerry, I know I was just telling him I'm good friends with you, and we met each other at the Czech Institute many years ago, probably like a half a decade ago at this point, or maybe even a little bit longer. And we did a podcast together a while back. It's actually one of my favorite ones even to date. And because I thought it was like a very genuine story that a lot of people could relate to and stuff of that sort. And I just wanted to kind of get you back on the podcast. And basically, I'll just have you take over, and I'll try to act smart by asking a few elaborate questions here and there. But basically, talking about as you know, and a lot of people struggle with today, you know, like obesity and being overweight and stuff of that sort. And unfortunately, the narrative today too is it's kind of like a disease that you have like no control over. You know what I mean?
yeah,
A lot of that is being pushed, not in every circle, but um, in quite a bit of circles, especially in the medical community. And they kind of stated like it's a disease,
mm,
but they stated in a way and like a tone that's like you have no control over it and it's totally out of your hands and it's definitely not your fault, et cetera, et cetera. And that's appealing to a lot of listeners because once again, it displaces blame away from them and it makes you feel a little bit better in the short term. But they forget to mention that, yes, it is a disease, but it's a disease caused by many decades of poor lifestyle and nutritional choices, which are the result of obviously various variables, which I'll have you cover. And it's just, of course, the stuff we talk about today, guys, if you're still in the mindset of thinking you're going to find like health in a pill and a quick fad diet or a quick boot camp and stuff like that, it's not for you. You're literally wasting your time. Do not listen to this live at all. But if you're interested in going on an honest journey, which isn't going to be easy, but will, you know, get you to where you want to go, and there will be ups and downs for sure, then this story is for you. But just remember, in short, like the human DNA strand, it's very constant. It really hasn't even changed in over 200,000 years. And it's so consistent, you rarely see any mutations, you know? You see a lot of very consistent human beings. And, you know, before 1950, there are almost no obese people in the US. And if we kind of rewind back a little bit further to pre-agriculture, you know, hunter and gatherer days, literally zero obese people. So it's like, how could it be a disease that you have no control over all of a sudden 1970s plus um, when the DNA hasn't even changed at all, you know, and we're basically the same Homo sapiens that walked there like 200,000 years ago for the most part. Of course, the environment has changed, and that's a big contributor. But Jerry, I'll let you take over and kind of share a bit of your story, and we'll just kind of go from there.
yeah. So like you mentioned, Eugene, and thanks for inviting me on. I really enjoy talking to you, man. Just kind of piggyback on what you prefaced there. Yeah, I spent my whole life obese, you know, until I'm 45 now. Until I was probably, I don't know, mid 30s, I'd say, where before I finally kind of got a handle on it. But uh, but yeah, and I'll admit I had a lot of diseases with my obesity, but obesity wasn't one of them. I had autoimmunity, I had depression, anxiety, anger issues, GERD, other like IBS type of issues. And this, I mean, I had all this stuff, Eugene, before like middle school. So this, and I'm the same Homo sapien, the same DNA strand as the people now that are being told that that it is this disease that they have no control over. And so just like the people that are falling prey to this marketing propaganda, which is all it is, that folks, it's just pure marketing propaganda, plain and simple. And be happy to break that down like objectively for you down the road. But just like the people that are falling prey to this propaganda now, I was really stuck in this victim mode mindset. I was stuck in this poor me. I can't catch a break. I'm a have not, and that stemmed from my childhood, where just a little bit of a backstory. I'm an only child, and my father worked. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and when I was about 7 years old, my mother just up and moved away and divorced my dad and I, pretty much. So that really set the tone for my victim mindset, my victimitis, as I like to call it. And what I realized, probably in my mid 30s, was that, this playing the victim card, holding on to anger, holding on to sadness, choosing to be disgusted with the world and my place in it, was only harming me. It was only harming me, with the exception of the people that I wasn't kind to, the people that I wasn't loving to, because of the way I viewed myself, things about myself I didn't like. So with the exception of those people, I was the only one that I was harming with that mindset. And if something like Ozempic, or I forget what some of the other like semaglutide type agents are, but if something like that would have came around like in my early 20s, late teens, I would have been all over it. I would have been all over it, and it wouldn't have done me any good. And so I'd like to comment on the whole disease thing, the whole obesity being a disease. And I would say that obesity is a symptom of probably a true pathology. I don't even know if we'd call it a disease, but a true pathology in the mind. A
Hmm.
mental illness, or a mental dysfunction, or just being miserable because you don't know about your choices that you're making in life. So I'd say, yeah, on that aspect, there is some disease in there, but the actual obesity itself is just a symptom. It's just a symptom of those things. And if we are to look at, let's just say it is a disease. Let's just say it is. The way they're marketing it is implicitly saying, if you have a disease, you need a pharmaceutical to get rid of it. I know you. I know you've experienced this just like I have, but seeing people get rid of diseases that people normally are being told by the doctors that you have to be on, diabetes type 2, for instance. You have to be on insulin for the rest of your life because you have type 2 diabetes now. So if someone's being told they have type 2 diabetes and they have to be on insulin, that's the same, basically, BS propaganda that is going along with this new obesity is a disease, it's genetic, it's out of your control. And what that's doing, that's fueling our victim mindset. It's fueling our our ability to put our responsibility onto the shelf, and it's also fueling that sense that we're all have to be mindful of in this modern world, which is that losing control, because we are so much in so much busyness and so much getting caught in the matrix, worrying about, putting so much emphasis on things that don't matter on a daily basis. We're trying to keep up with the Joneses. We're trying to make the next paycheck last. We're trying to make ends meet. We're trying to save for vacation. So we're really, as a culture, as a society, at a state of chaos where we don't feel like we're in control. And I think that is a major source of anxiety for a lot of people. And this marketing propaganda very much appeals to that.
Yeah, and I also found you mentioned like Ozempic and the myriad of other whatever semi-glutides. They always kind of make a very fancy sounding name for it too, to sound more scientific. And
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
way, whenever I hear that stuff, honestly, Jerry, it always reminds me of one of my favorite books, Animal Farm,
Oh,
George Orwell.
yeah.
And I love that book. Remember that line that the pigs created to kind of hypnotize the sheep, you know, two legs bad, four legs
Yeah,
good,
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
know, and they're like two legs bad, four legs good, two legs bad. It's kind of the same kind of
yeah,
thing. They're like make up fancy sounding shit. And um, although it's so obvious that, you know, America's literally more medically drugged out than ever before, but yet the sickest humans in the history of the entire human
yeah,
race. Even if you consider all 28 human species that have come and gone, you know,
yeah, yeah,
all 28 of them, they're literally the sickest, most miserable, most mentally and physically ill humans that have ever walked this earth, and yet more medically drugged out. And yet they think more of like what doesn't work is all of a sudden going to work
yeah.
somehow.
Well,
You know,
yeah,
I'm like, dude, when do you finally say like, hey, you know, I'm on like seven different medical drugs, I look terrible, I feel terrible,
yeah.
something's
Everyone I
not
know,
working.
yeah, everyone, all my family members, when they've passed on, they were on multiple prescription drugs, or they were in a poor state of health, had no energy for the last 2 decades or more of their life. This is the American story, and it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't happen that way. But we've been hypnotized into this trance of like, this is the way it is. This is just what aging looks like, and eventually you go to the doctor. Eventually you have a surgery every year. Eventually you're spending all your time in a therapist's office or a doctor's office, and that's really what we've been programmed to believe, and programmed to believe that that's the way that it is. And this has a source. That this started, I mean, the whole brainwashing of the masses, and and inciting groupthink and hive mind into people, that that's centuries old, that millennia is old. But this whole like medical sorcery, this whole uh creating gods out of science, right? Like, our science isn't as good as it was back in the Babylonian times. Um, if it was, go build me a pyramid then, But if you take a look at, um, if your audience isn't familiar with this, guys, look up the Flexner Report of 1910 and what happened there. And that was literally the start of it. John D. Rockefeller and some of his cohorts, they funded this this study. And at that time, a lot of the medical professionals, they were utilizing a holistic approach. They were using herbs. They were taking a look at someone's home life. They were taking a look at stress, and they were taking a look at all this stuff. And they were actually treating the person, not the
Mm-hmm.
disease. Flexner Report of 1910, Flexner went around the country and basically went to all these medical clinics and was like, you're grade A, B, or C. A is gold standard. You're looking at people like a machine, so you can stay open. B is like silver standard. You are, you're not quite where we need you to be, but you're salvageable. And then if you were any sort of like holistic practitioner, any sort of herbologist, looked at the stars to help treat people, any of that stuff, you were just deemed a quack and you were shut down. There were a few key people that spoke up, that were pretty prominent in the medical world, as prominent as you could be in 1910, I guess. And they were really speaking out against it. They were saying, look, people's personal lives, what's going on in their state of stress, their level of happiness, all of that really directly affects their health. And those people were bought off. And that was the start of it, guys. They went to the biomedical model of care, where they went from treating people that had diseases and going to looking at preventing diseases, not just symptoms management, tracing symptoms back to where they came from. That was the standard model, but it took too long, and it didn't pay very well because there was no prescription drug, and it works. So um, so they went to this biomedical model of care, where they basically used used the human physiology. They compared that to like a mechanistic model, and so they started treating people like machines. So it's like when your transmission goes down, you go and you fix the transmission, you're back on the road. And that's kind of what they did with us. So it's like, if you have a heart issue, they're going to give you a statin drug, and they're going to say, okay, we're treating your cholesterol. We could do another show about that, but we're going to treat your cholesterol. And we have no numbers, we have no data on how many lives these statins actually save. We have no data on the efficacy of not giving a drug, and giving lifestyle adjustments, and actually losing some weight and doing that none of that is factored in there. That they just treat the symptom, and they're really looking at treating and managing diseases and not people. And that's
Yeah.
for it.
The one issue, I mean, I got to ask you this for sure, but the one issue I see is when I talk to people about this, like, for example, I was just talking to someone like 2 weeks ago, uh, like obese male, young guy, 32 years old too, um, going to like a psychiatrist, you know, um, watching a lot of podcasts online and stuff like that. And he's like, oh, well, I tried, he's having a lot of anxiety. And he's like, I tried, um, you know, eating better, eating healthy, but you ask him what healthy is, it's like
Right.
complete oblivious understanding of what
Yeah.
even health. And then he's like, well, I've been going to a psychologist for, I can't get along with my boss at work and he causes me so much anxiety because I feel like I'm having like a panic attack before I even enter the office, moreover, to deal with this person.
Right.
He's like, I've been going to a psychologist for 1 year trying to work on this. Now I feel like I definitely need psychiatric drugs. And I just asked, just out of curiosity, I mean, did you guys ever talk about the idea of possibly just finding a new job, you know? And they're like, no, that wasn't even discussed, you know? I'm like, oh, wow, that's pretty crazy that like that wasn't even freaking discussed.
Yeah.
Although like talking to him for like 3 minutes, he instantly said, like, I hate my boss and it's causing me like panic attacks going into work every day. And they're like, oh, we're working at just reframing how I view my boss. And so, and to a degree, it may work a little bit, but there's a certain threshold where it's like, hey, the best option is just to get out of this toxic work environment. And, not surprising, just get out of the swamp and then your body heals itself, this toxic swamp. But um, so how do you, and I've seen this so much, you know, the, well, I tried everything, but
Yeah.
they don't even know like what movement as medicine is. They have like,
Right.
people think they are like an expert, but I'm like, dude, how are you like obese and like miserable and on all these drugs and even have a hint of knowing like what the fuck you're doing? And
Yeah.
what is your experience with that crowd been?
Yeah. So very similar. Very similar. It's most of the people that I've seen, they're already seeing counselors, already seeing psychologists, and and to your point, it's like the work that's being done is getting them to put up with an undesirable situation. I've even heard crazy advice given by therapists like, I forget the actual terminology they use, but basically it's more or less shove an emotion down. When you get an emotion you don't like, shove it down, eventually it'll go away. Now, that's what, you and I, we studied, Stephen Walensky's work, and that would be like the dissolving of the energy to some state, but there's no dismantling of the cause of it. And so, like in this, the cause of that example is that this guy has a job in an environment that's making him ill, and it has nothing to do with his core motivations in life, his true self, how he really wants to show up, how he wants to manifest his dream in the world. It has nothing to do with that. It's all about making someone else rich, or he's got this job for different motives, whatever. And so no one's really looking at that. So I've experienced a very similar thing. And one thing that I would, and I'll be very careful with how I word this, because I'm definitely not wanting to offend or trigger anybody here. But if anyone is watching this, and you are, at a pretty pretty extreme state of overweight, if you're 50 pounds or more overweight, really take a look at your defense mechanisms, because I see people, it seems with me, the correlation is the bigger the person, the more defenses they have, the more guarded they are with their own beliefs, with their own opinions. And that's only because that's what's kept you safe in your life. That is what's kept you safe. There's probably something that's harmed you. There's something that's made you feel, inadequate in some way, shape, or form, or unprotected, unsafe, unloved, whatever it is. There's something in your life that's probably led you to believe that that's the state that you're in, or that you belong in. And so you create these defenses, these protections, and some of that is putting the weight on, some of that is coping with food. But the bigger the person I've seen, the more they can utilize an open mind and welcome and trust and seek true, honest guidance. Because if you hang on to that pattern of defending against true information, defending against things that are going to be helpful for you that might go against your current belief system, if you create a pattern of doing that, you're just going to stay in whatever state that you're in that you don't currently like.
Yeah, and I find like that example is like kind of what I refer to as, I'm sure it's a phrase that many people refer to it as, I just haven't heard it too often, is kind of like a mind virus. You
Yes,
know, some
yes.
kind of belief system that's leading to repetitive behavior choices and patterns that are leading to negatively impacting your biology, and then eventually killing the host,
Yeah.
which is the person suffering from health disease ABC, that they of course don't have any control over because it's 100% genetic. And the only solution is just to have more medical drugs, although they never really worked in the past, and you're more miserable and more overweight than ever, but somehow more medical drugs is going to work to counter the
Yeah.
side effects of those medical drugs, blah, blah, blah. Maybe work at making a decent amount of money for people, but not, unfortunately, solving the real problems of people gullible enough to believe that they're going to find a easy solution in a pill. And quick
Hmm.
fixes, I love that phrase, only if it worked, but it's great. But unfortunately, quick fixes never work. And like Jerry said, and it's very common sense, and a 2-year-old child can understand that, if you have like a rock inside your shoe, you gotta, if you want to walk pain free, you got to take that rock out. Stop walking with that rock there and taking painkillers instead, which is literally what everyone fucking is doing.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
doing,
Yeah.
and in
Yeah.
fact, like medical professionals have to go to 12 years of schooling just to continue to do that
Just to
exact
keep,
system,
just keep
um,
numbing the rock.
which is like super crazy, which is super crazy to me. And there are medical professionals that have finally, had enough of that, you know what I mean? And it kind of coming out and speaking out against that as maybe, hey, as a compliment, you could use medicine, on top of all this other stuff you have to be doing, but you have to do all this stuff, and you can't, you have to do it honestly too, because I find a lot of people are like, well, I tried that. Like maybe you tried it for like a week, or you're so inconsistent with it, or you tried like something silly, like, like some extreme, uh, typical marketable ABC diet, whatever is on the market today,
Mhm.
uh, well, Jerry, you also kind of mentioned like Ozempic, like right off the bat, and I'd like to kind of go back to, like weight loss MDs in general, and kind of prescribing all these like fat loss drugs and stuff of that sort. Like, first of all, just right off the bat, I've never met like a healthy looking weight loss MD myself. They may actually be out there for sure, but it's very rare, which is already questionable to me, because if their health advice works so damn well, how come they themselves usually look 10 years older than they actually are, look very haggard all the time?
Yeah.
A lot of them actually have weight issues themselves,
Yeah.
ironically, and if
Yeah.
it's working so well and their knowledge works so damn well, how come it's not working so well for themselves? That's just my observation. But I also find like one of the biggest issues is a lot of these drugs like Ozempic, unfortunately, are just, as Walensky would say, not meeting the problem at the level of the problem.
Right.
Like you hinted at, the problem of excess weight gain is a thinking and emotional dimension problem.
Yeah.
It could also be an education problem as well, combination with that, in terms of like not even knowing what real food is and how to use
Yeah.
movement as medicine, or the fact that probably, sleeping 5 hours a day is not good for you.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know that either. But because it's not meeting the problem at the level of the problem, it's kind of approaching it just from a biological level, um, inevitably the problem will always persist and it'll never
Yes.
go away. So my prediction is, just like with all the other fat loss drugs that have come and gone over the decades, although America is more obese than ever before, although we had more of these fat loss drugs come and go over the years, um, that the issue is just going to explode to even higher levels, because now people are just going to be more lost than ever, because they've been sold these false
Yeah.
promises
More
over and over again, that you really don't have to change the person that's causing the disease, because it's not even the person in this case.
right.
Just kind of worry about, this kind of symptom of excess weight gain. But I was just wondering what your opinion about that profession is, and your experience with that profession in
Yeah.
general.
I mean, it's very much mirrors yours. And I'll say this, obviously with this disclaimer that, there are individuals within the field that are good people and they're doing things with the right, leading with the heart. That doesn't mean that, that everybody in this field is a bad person, but they are in a system that's more or less evil. And the reason why I say that is because it is not designed to get people better. It is not, because health is so damn simple. Like, that's one of the most ironic and sad parts about this whole epidemic we have of poor health and disease, is that it's not difficult and it's not confusing, and you've heard the truth probably 1,000 times, but you've refused to believe it. Eat real food, exercise regularly, go after something that you want from your heart and soul to occupy your time, and make sure you spend plenty of time doing that and get good sleep. Like things like that, it's super simple. It's super simple, but people refuse it. So I would say that even if this was a genetic condition, like you've said many times, I've heard you say it before, Eugene, and this is, along the, epigenetics train. And that is, genetics loads the gun, but your behaviors pull the trigger. And so epigenetics is just the expression of your genetic potential. So even if you have a genetic predisposition to obesity, and I'm not even going to concede that point, but let's just pretend you have a genetic predisposition to obesity, it is your choices, your decisions, and what you do with your time that allows that genetic switch to be flipped. And these people that are in this profession are ignoring that fact, because there's, what is it? It's like 95% of all the diseases are self-imposed. In
Mm-hmm.
other words, creating behaviors that are flipped and switches to create disease. And the other 5% are genetic, things that are just going to happen, probably couldn't have avoided it. And I would say that I bet that number's way, way high too, the 5%.
It's probably more like 1%, more like
Probably.
1% of 1%, if I have to be
Exactly.
honest, from personal observation.
Exactly. And so just even conceding all these points, that science has uncovered, it still doesn't resonate. It still doesn't resonate. So they're either intentionally leaving out the truth, or they are making stuff up to sell products. And if we want to talk about the pharmaceutical approach to treating disease. Well, what is a disease? The definition is something like, a disruption within a system that creates symptoms that have a known cause, something like that. Well, you take any prescription drug and you take a look at its purported benefit, and all the side effects. Now it's going to affect you different than it's going to affect me. So I might take on 60% of those side effects. You might take on 1 or 2. So that drug is going to have a different effect on me than it is you, but that is the effect of the drug. Now, worst case scenario, you're someone who has low vitality, you have a high physiological load, you're predisposed to experiencing symptoms and catching colds and things like that. You are probably going to be more symptomatic to the side effects of a prescription drug. So you show up already in poor health, already needing some intervention, needing some guidance. You're most likely to get a prescription drug. So you get a prescription drug, you experience several of the side effects, and guess what you've just created by taking that drug? You've created a disruption in your system, create symptoms that has a known cause. You've created a disease by taking the prescription drug, and then you'll need another prescription that has more side effects, another one, and another one, and another one. So this disease pathology, in part, can be pointed right at the prescription drugs that people are taking. And I've seen it happen over and over again. To the point, I've
Yeah.
seen one guy that was on two blood thinners and 1 blood thickener because he was given blood thinner like 30 years ago for his or I'm sorry, blood thickener like 30 years ago for his high blood pressure. And then 30 years later, when all these symptoms start manifesting from being on these blood pressure meds and everything else for 30 years, he starts creating this heart issue. Well, what happens when you're dehydrated? You freaking your blood's thicker, you're flushing out your electrolytes, you're flushing out your salts, your bicarbonates, and your magnesium, and these things that are really important for your heart's function. So he creates a heart issue. So they give him a blood thinner. So they got him on 2 blood thickeners and a blood thinner.
Yeah. I've
And they don't
seen,
even talk about that.
yeah, I mean, through 18 years of coaching, you've seen this as well. It's like, dude, especially with high blood pressure, you get people to do the most like absolute basic bullshit. Like 4 months later, like 4 weeks later, their
Yeah.
blood pressure is completely fine and they're healthy enough to not even need this blood pressure medication. I'm like, dude, you're on this shit for like 10 years,
Yes.
15 years, and you could have done just like this most minute of basic shit and get
Yeah.
off of it. And no one even hinted at the fact that you should be doing this is like ridiculous.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
uh, I kind of wanted to, yeah, I mean, regarding all the medication, it's so silly. Like sometimes with these weight loss doctors, just in the comments section, just seeing how lost and confused people are,
Yeah.
just seeing like, I've tried, they'll hear exactly what you said. Although you've been obese and you're now like ripped and shredded at like an older age too, which is even more impressive,
Mm-hmm.
than being ripped and shredded at a younger age. And you have 2 kids and a wife. So you have that kind of busy schedule and a practice as well with a bunch of clients. Um, and the message could be coming from you. And
Yeah.
people are like, well, I've tried everything. You know, like the 50-year-old woman that clearly hasn't even fucking tried shit. Or if she has, it's been the most pathetic and inconsistent attempt at whatever she's tried ever,
Yeah.
you know? And she's like, this is my only hope to get on these drugs. And I've lost 30 pounds and I'm so happy now. I'm like, okay, let's do a 2-year follow up and see where you are.
Well, and
Probably more miserable and worse off than ever before. Plus, it's like so silly that people think there are like no side effects. So first of all, I would highly recommend asking your doctor to go on record and say that it's completely safe, any drug,
yeah, go
and
on
see how
record.
many of them will actually say that. None of them.
No.
Zero.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
forget that, not you, but generally people forget that every drug that was recalled from the market from being unsafe was at first approved as safe enough to be released into the market. There are 1,000 drugs that the FDA recalls every single year in just the US alone, and close to 400,000 Americans die from medical malpractice and pharmaceutical drug use every year.
Yeah.
400K. That's a lot of body bags. You know,
Yeah.
400,000 people is like super crazy. And I mean, if you take into consideration the complexity of, atomic matter condensing and forming molecules that then form the tissue of the body, that then, or form rather the macromolecules of the proteins, fats, carbohydrates, that then form the tissue of the body, that then form the 12 human systems, and how a single very concentrated dose of any drug kind of disrupts in one way or another the balance of all 12 systems, and how all those systems interact, and then combine that with 7 other drugs that disrupt the systems in various ways. And it's like, dude, good fucking luck like figuring out how all of that works and combines together, even if you're the absolute smartest pharmacologist like on the planet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
all of a sudden this like 50-year-old overweight woman is like, it's completely safe.
Yeah.
That's just how desperate and stupid they are.
Yeah.
They're just willing to hear what they want to hear because they're just so desperate to avoid the truth of what's really going on in their life and not deal with that at the root cause.
Yeah. Yeah. And quick Google search will show you like what's really going on with the side effects of these things, and what's not being talked about. And this is just common. This is common pharmaceutical BS. Like Vioxx killed something like 55,000 people in trials or something like that, and it still got released. And they actually hired attorneys to determine the risk of how much profit we're going to make and how much we have to pay out in lawsuits. And they released it anyway, and they were found guilty of that, and nobody went to prison. So this is not to get too conspiratorial, but there's a lot of pharmaceutical money in the trenches of lawmakers and obviously in the people who are running media ads and what have you. So this is just an attempt to make people trust in them and see them as the authority, and then we just get really silly, nonsensical perspectives about what people believe is the right choice. And these things they're not stripping body fat. They're stripping lean muscle mass, and they're I don't remember what the
Mm-hmm.
percentage is, but it's something like if you lose 20 pounds, you'd expect to lose 5 pounds of lean muscle mass, something like that. With this, it's like the inverse. It's like 15 pounds of lean or something like that. Don't quote me on that, but it's something along those lines.
Yeah. And not
Um,
to interrupt, I'd say even on a really good program, you can probably gain like 2 or 3 pounds of muscle for every
yeah.
for every 20 pounds you lose, especially with the general population, which still has that newbie gain
Oh,
window, you
totally,
know?
totally.
So
They
they
can.
can totally take advantage of that and actually gain muscle, not a lot, but gain muscle while losing a decent amount of fat. So not to interrupt,
Yeah.
but go ahead.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And that's if you're at such a if you've got carrying around quite a bit of extra body weight, you can still eat in a deficit for your body weight, but eat in a surplus for your lean mass, and so you can put on lean mass for sure. Um, but yeah, I would just say that the confusion that has been set in is totally intentional, and it creates, like I said, silly, nonsensical perspectives and stances on this. Folks, we were created or evolved, whatever your theory is, or combination of, to eat real food, to move a whole lot, to have fun, to sing and dance, to have sex, to sleep. to wake up with the sun and go to sleep when the sun sets. That's how we were created, and that is really like the basis of health. Anything that we stray away from that, we add a bunch of stress into our life. When we have, we're living a life we haven't been created or evolved to live in, and we are creating all this misery with living in this modern world. That is probably a big source of what's going on with you. That
Hmm.
big source of what's going on with you. So the bigger you are, like I said, the bigger you are, take a look at your defenses and how open you are to hearing things that are outside of the medical perspective. The medical perspective has got this nice trance on everybody. They've got this bubble trance and they're shoving people into it, and people aren't thinking for themselves. They're not trusting any information that's outside of a medical setting, and that's really gotten us really sick. Like you said, we've got more online fitness influencers than we've ever had. We've got more diets to choose from than we ever have. There's a gym on every corner. There's a holistic health expert in your town, I promise. And yet we are not taking advantage of the true options that are out there. We're only utilizing the medical industry, and we're sicker, more miserable, and more overweight than we've ever been, ever.
Hi everyone, thanks for tuning into the podcast. I'm curious, have you ever been confused by the labels in the grocery store? In Yevgeny's book, he demystifies the difference between caged, cage-free, free-range, and pasture-raised meats. He also covers how to avoid GMOs, source high-quality water, fish, supplements, and other related topics. It's a beautifully illustrated, non-technical read that comes with a comprehensive video series and other extended learning materials. Jump on Amazon and check out the book titled Anti-Factory Farm Shopping Guide by Eugene Trufkin. Now let's dive back into the podcast.
Yeah, and I feel like one of my favorite lines from Walensky was like, "Real change can't begin unless you start being honest about the lies you tell yourself." I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that's like so powerful. But Jerry, quick question, and this
Yeah.
might be the hardest question you've ever heard in your life. So if you pass it, it's like easy street going forward, okay?
Okay. All right.
So someone that's like 50, 60 plus pounds overweight, they come to you and they're like, "You said all this stuff, that you just said to me," and they're like, "Well, I do eat healthy. I do eat
Yeah.
real food." Okay, go.
Uh, so that happens a lot. So,
Yes.
so tell me what eating healthy looks like for you. And they generally come out with, try to, right? I try to watch how much sugar I eat. I try to not eat too much bread. I try not to, it usually, boils down to not eat too many calories and watch how many carbohydrates I eat. And so I ask them, okay, so a perfect day for you looks like, and some of them are able to tell me what a good day of eating looks like for them. Some of them are not. And then I ask them, okay, how often are you eating that way? How often are you actually sticking to your healthy diet? Well, on the upward ends, they'll say 70%, 80%, something like that. But mostly, the honest ones are like, half the time maybe. So without fail, they do not know what a healthy diet is. They don't know what eating healthy really is. So they have no clue. So that's 100% of the answers I get. And of those that don't even know how to eat healthy, they don't even have the ability to stick to their healthy plan in a way that's consistent enough to actually make a change. So again, I'll point that back to, yeah, it's an education issue for sure. But even if they knew the perfect things to
Hmm.
eat, they wouldn't stick to it.
Yeah.
So the choice is an issue, right? And that's a mind virus. That's something we mentioned earlier. Okay, let's educate you and then figure out exactly why is it that you choose to not do things that are good for you. And that's where we can unwrap the present. That's where the real work
No,
happens.
no, Jerry, you're wrong.
Yeah.
They just need more Ozempic.
Yeah. Yeah. They need more.
You don't wear a white coat. Like, what the fuck do
Yeah.
you know, man?
I
Yeah.
actually told somebody once, I was like, no, I'm not a doctor, but I'll send you a picture of me with my shirt off, and I would like to see a picture of your doctor with their shirt off, and then we'll keep
Yeah.
talking.
Or to see if they could even like walk a mile without like going into cardiac arrest. Now
Yeah. Yeah.
there are no absolutes. There are a handful of doctors that probably run circles around me, fitness wise and health wise, for sure. They
Okay.
do exist. And they're far in between. And I love the emergency staff. You know, I've trained many emergency room doctors and nurses and stuff like that. And they're the true representation of what medical science can, the marvels they can do.
Yeah.
I'm moreover referring to the medical drug dealing MDs, you know, that is kind of selling you on these kind of false hope, short, quick, here, take this, like, screw even pondering that your life is a complete mess on every single level possible. Just take these high blood pressure medications and don't worry about your stressful job and dealing with that boss you absolutely can't stand and hate, or that probably shitty relationship at home you have, or the fact that you're working 70 hours a week, which pretty much no central nervous system can handle anyways. Yeah, keep doing all that. Don't change any of that.
Yeah.
Here is your high blood pressure medication. Come back to me in 2 years when you develop side effects from it. We'll just put you on another one and increase the dose of the first one. And then we'll repeat this cycle every 2 or 3 years until you're 50 and you're on 10 different medical drugs and more obese and miserable and look worse than ever. And then we'll figure it out from there. I'm kind of referring to that kind of medical practice, which is like, unfortunately, like probably like how 85% of general medicine practices.
Yeah. And I would even say that, there's a couple deeper levels to that that are more nefarious might not be the right word, destructive. And I don't know if this is just like the ego of of the doctor or what have you. And I can only speak for myself and the people that I've spoken to and worked with. But this is a very common theme. So they won't address like everything that you put on your intake sheet, or they won't think it's a big deal. One example is, well, for myself, I remember going in, and I'm 5'7" right now, I'm about 155 pounds. And I remember the doctor visit that really flipped my switch. It pissed me off so much, and that's what got me on this path of pursuing holistic health. So I show up there, I'm like 220, 225, on a 5'7" frame.
All
And
muscle?
oh, of course. Oh yeah, pure
Yeah.
muscle.
Okay. Then that's
I look,
okay. You know.
I look like I used to weigh 40 pounds more and was taking Ozempic to get it off. But so I show up there, I'm drinking like a half gallon of vodka and 50 beers a week. I'm having chest pains. I'm not sleeping. I'm always angry. I was extremely dehydrated, of course. So all these things, the doctor didn't even mention my chest pains. He didn't tell me to go to the gym and lose some weight. He didn't even mention the drinking. And I put all this on my intake questionnaire. And he just gave me some prescriptions, including one that was a, pretty destructive SSRI, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, which, they give a lot of people for depression, anxiety, and stuff. So he gave me one of those. And then he gave me a blood pressure medication when I was already severely dehydrated. Right. So you look at this guy and he's like, oh, he drinks like a fish. This guy like is literally drinking from the time he gets off work until he passes out. So there's no way he's hydrated. You could look at me, tell I was dehydrated. So he gives me something that's just going to flush all the water out of my body. He doesn't tell me to slow down on the drinking. Doesn't tell me to go to the gym. So that's just like one story. Another one that comes to mind is, I had this guy show up and he fills out the health appraisal questionnaire, that shows his physiological load. He had the highest physiological load I've ever seen on a client. It was so deep into the red. And he shows up to the meeting just pissed off. And I was like, what's going on? He's like, I just left the doctor. And I was like, okay. And he's like, that guy told me that I was healthier than 95% of the people that he sees.
Which may be true.
Which may be true.
That's
Right?
that's the ultimate saddest part
Right.
of all,
Right. And so, yeah. And so now we talk baselines and, what scientific studies really mean. But that is like just an example of what they're really treating, guys. They're not, this guy wasn't even on the doctor's radar. And I'm looking at him going, oh my God, you're not going to live another 15 years. He's probably 35, I think. Like, you're not going to see 50. I didn't say that to him, but I'm thinking, gosh, this guy's not going to see 50 years old. And he had a doctor telling him, basically what the doctor was saying, in my opinion, was, oh, I can't see that you need any drugs yet. So he was already on like a blood pressure med and a statin, and what else was he on? He was on some antipsychotics too. So the doctor was just basically like, more or less, come back when you need a drug. It was basically what he was told. It was surreal. It was really surreal. But that's the kind of shit that's going on. That's the shit that's going on. And I'll go back to what I said earlier. It's because they treat diseases. They don't guide and nurture and help a person that has a disease. Huge difference. Huge difference.
Yeah, and I think it's because also they're in the business of like treating numbers and not the individual.
Yeah.
Like I can go like this next to blood work, and sometimes, like with 10% of obese people, their blood work actually looks pretty good still,
Yep.
due to various reasons. But I can go like this, and I'm like, something's not adding up, dude. This person's like 80 pounds overweight, but okay, their blood work looks fine, but they complain about major depression all the time, and their ankles and knees hurt so much from carrying all the weight around, and they have social anxiety issues because of their image and stuff of that sort. And I'm like, okay, well, clearly there's more to the picture than just going like, oh, numbers check out. Okay, you're good.
Yeah.
Out the door, out the door you go. And um, yeah, and stuff of that sort. But I had this one question. I also hear this very often with like Ozempic or other fat loss drug users, and uh, I just say drug users because that's what it is. They're using
Yep.
drugs, and let's just stop masking it as the marketable phrase of medicine. If you look up the category of how that drug is actually, or how that substance is actually registered, it says drugs in the classification of the drug.
Yep.
So
Yep.
using that stuff, you're using drugs, et cetera, et cetera. And it's not really that much different from the guy using coke or heroin to numb out his symptoms, or alcohol in various other ways than this person is to get rid of their body fat and stuff of that sort. But I do hear people say like, yeah, I'm going to get on Ozempic and stuff like that, and I'm going to make the changes. I'm like, well you're putting the cart in front of the horse here, because you can make those changes and not need Ozempic. Then why do you need? See, they're coming up with these kind of elaborate internal dialogues to help justify any possible reason to not change.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you can kind of touch on that, and if also, because you're obese yourself for so long, what type of internal dialogues, or kind of, as Walensky would say, the lies we tell ourselves to keep ourselves going down a path of pathology that maybe you experienced with yourself and now you're more conscious of, and in retrospect, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So the first part of the question, remind me what you asked again, Eugene.
Yeah, so I forgot exactly where the question started, but I was just basically saying on people, they're like, well, I'll create all these lifestyle
That's
changes
right.
like when I take Ozempic first. But I'm like, well, you can make these changes and it'll happen anyways. But then obviously they'll say, oh, I tried these changes. And then we address that already. So if you're still in denial, obviously don't keep listening to this episode. Please leave immediately, because you're just wasting your time. Just go be on your way in denial, and
Yeah.
just see 10 years from now when you're worse off than ever and more medically drugged out than ever and looking worse than ever. And then hopefully you'll come to the realization there that you're going down like an unsustainable path and stuff of that sort. But I went on a tangent a little bit. I also don't know if the screen froze a bit. Let me know if you can hear me, Jerry. Okay. All right. We may have had a little bit of a reception issue. Jerry, I don't know if you can hear me. I'm going to remove you, but try to jump back in. See, some people jumped in. Joe, Manuel, Oscar, good to see you. Dennis, a few other people. Matt, Warren, good to see you. Lopez, Theo, good to see you guys. Let me see if I could. All right. So I'll wait a little bit for him to jump back in, and then we'll rock and roll. If you guys have any questions too, shoot them my way, and I'll ask Jerry to kind of address them. I know he doesn't look like it. He looks great now, but he was actually like obese for a very large portion of his life. And he made his transformation, the honest way, no drugs, just changing the person that's causing the disease. And sure enough, his run-in with obesity and stuff of that sort went away. If you change the person that's causing the disease, then the disease goes away if it's not too late for you. One thing that may have happened is his batteries might have died. I had that happen before. Oh, Jerry's back in the house. Hey, I thought the FDA was shutting us down. see. Let me turn on. Jerry, I think your audio's off. Oh, there you go.
Can you hear me now?
Perfect. Yep.
Sorry,
I
my
think
phone overheated.
no, I thought it was like either that or your battery's died because I had that happen before. It just kind of freezes.
Yeah,
Uh,
I made sure it was nice and charged before we started. Um, but yeah, to your point about that lie to self, and really what that is that's someone not trusting and believing that they can actually do it, and which is another reason why that's just and the doctors that are saying that's what I do with people is even more ridiculous because they're fully culpable for that now. Um, but if you really believed that you are going to be able to maintain the weight after the Ozempic process, then you should also believe that you can get the weight off because it's the behaviors that keep the weight off that take the weight off.
exactly.
There's no difference. If you eat and move like someone who is 50 pounds less than you are now, and you start that now, you will lose 50 pounds. And so you're going to have to eat and move like someone who weighs less than 50 pounds or 50 pounds less than you do right now when you lose the 50 pounds. So none of that holds any water. None of that makes any sense. It's absolutely completely illogical.
It's
And
just
then
another
also,
bullshit story,
it is.
to keep down the unsustainable path of mental and physical pathology, of normalized mental and physical pathology at all costs.
Yes, exactly. And it's just a lack of faith and trust and belief in their ability to do it. And there might be some confusion in there and what have you, but yeah, it doesn't hold any water. There's no logic in that whole strategy. And some of the lies I would tell to myself, basically, probably the number one what a lie I told myself was that, oh, it's not that bad. It's
Yep.
not that bad. When 25 pounds overweight, it's like, oh, I still feel pretty good in these shirts or whatever. And then you start buying new shirts, start buying new pants, and oh, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. And then for me personally, when I got to like 7, I'm the type, maybe it's my personality or whatever, but when I get to the point where I know that something is off, I'm not really in denial about it. It's like, okay, I've got to do something about this. I've got to do something about this. But I believe that I knew how. I believe that I knew how to do it. And until I learned like the truth about what real healthy food is, what a good relationship with the gym and exercise really looks like, until I really learned that and what the best plan was for me, the best I could honestly get myself was to about, 20 pounds overweight. So for me, it's, with like my muscle frame and everything like that, you're looking at like 180 pounds for me. Is about the 20 pounds overweight mark. And when I get to about 180, I was feeling good, but I was still really overweight. And again, back to that original lie, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. So that's probably the number one lie I would tell to myself. It's not that bad. And the lies I told myself about the root cause was it's not my fault.
Mm-hmm.
My stress isn't my fault. My anger isn't my fault. My choosing to sabotage things wasn't my fault. So it's not that bad, and it's not my fault. Probably the two biggest lies that kept me stuck for the longest time.
Yeah, and I feel that that form of like dissociation or cognitive dissonance, whatever you want to call it, because a lot of people do feel stuck, like they don't have an answer of how to get out of their situation. So they begin developing belief systems and stories to kind of justify staying in
Yes.
that state of mental and physical pathology, and then believe in those lies that they basically tell themselves to keep going down the road. That's why it's like when you finally see a person, 2 or 3 decades after they've been accumulating weight for so long and they're like 50, 60, 70 pounds plus overweight, they have so many of these lies built up that they themselves believe are truths,
Yes.
that it's so hard to get to them, to show that like, hey, you've normalized mental and physical pathology, and what you're doing and what you embody and live like is just totally like ill. It's not good at all for you or anyone around you. And I forgot where I was going with that. I kind of spaced out on that one. But basically, that's what kind of keeps people down that road, because if they didn't have those belief structures, they would stop themselves right away, even when they're a little bit overweight.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So that's an important topic to address as well. And it's important to know like where even those stories came from, because they're going to keep popping up again to keep you down that path during your journey. So that's an important part to evaluate, I found.
Yeah. I would say that even the bigger, like the big shadow that forms from those beliefs is the identities that we create from them, you know? So it's like, if you believe that eating healthy looks like XYZ, and you believe that you've tried everything there is to try to get healthier, if you really believe that, then you could very well form an identity of healthy eating and exercise doesn't work for me. An identity of I am genetically obese, creating an identity of things that work for other people don't work for me, right? And those are all tied to your belief systems. And so beliefs, I believe, have got to be pliable, treat them more like opinions. They got to be more pliable. They got to be subject to change. You got to be open to hearing other people's beliefs and using those to enrich your own beliefs. And when you enrich your beliefs and you're open with your beliefs, you can be enriched in your identity, and you can be open in your identity, and be open to morphing into a different person on the regular, like just this regular trajectory of becoming anew, becoming uh, more more evolved towards the best self that you can possibly be. And it's not about because you're not good enough already. It's more about you have so much potential, and the potential within you never stops. From the day you die, you have the ability um, to exercise your potential, to reveal your genius in whatever stage of your life that happens to be in. And so that is our genetic code. That is how we're programmed to be. And that's really how our identity and belief structure could be and should be if we are to have our most joyful and fulfilled experience in life.
Yeah, and I find a lot of people are never going to get out of it because they're never going to seek out help, you know? And
Yeah.
it's really tough to solve a problem with the same belief system that led to that exact same problem. It's
Yes.
actually
Exactly.
pretty impossible for the most part. And unfortunately, people have many problems at many different levels. So they may need education on nutrition. So they need to seek a nutrition coach, or they may need education also on using movement as medicine, or even like on finances, because that's a
Mm-hmm.
big stress for a lot of people. So may need some basic financial education. They don't need to become a guru in any of these things to achieve optimum health. Just kind of like basic ground level stuff would be way more than enough for what most people are looking for, but just the consistent application of that stuff is going to be very important. Um, that's another thing I see a lot of people doing. They're like, well, I watched this quick 30-minute, 30-second TikTok reel. Now I know all about nutrition and healthy eating because this person that took Ozempic and lost all their weight now is going to be a fat loss coach for other confused people, although they themselves are equally still confused. So
Yeah.
maybe you went on a long education journey.
Mm.
And I feel this is so important in the fat loss journey and 100% needs to be part of the journey is for people to become their own mechanic eventually, you know, even if it's
Yeah.
not the case in the beginning.
Yes.
So can you talk about, um, you know, your journey regarding becoming your own mechanic and what that looked like for you?
Yeah. Yeah. So it stems from medical visits. Like, I mentioned that one doctor, he was a GP, and he just sent me with a couple prescriptions, which pissed me off. And so I decided, set out in my own ways. This is one of my beliefs. I know how to do this. It's not that bad. And I had some success in weight loss with changing my diet and exercising more and lifting weights. And but I was training poorly, and had poor posture and poor movement, and so I was creating injury. And I went to these doctors, and I went to a low back doctor, I went to a shoulder doctor, and both of them, I was in my early 30s, both of them told me that I had to quit lifting weights for the rest of my life. And I was like, dude, this is like the only thing in my life I look forward to besides my family. Like, no, you can't take this from me. What the hell? And so, I'm the type that'll really feel challenged when I'm told something like that. So I went and started doing some research on pain, research on health. And I started stumbling across the word holistic over and over. I didn't know what it meant. So I looked it up, and I was like, oh, okay, well, that sounds reasonable. And then I stumbled across Paul Chek, and he just started, the stuff he was saying was completely opposite of what the medical system was saying, completely opposite of what my doctors were telling me. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. So I immediately started studying his work and enrolled in his academy and his institute, which the beauty of studying in their system is that they invite you to go study all these other avenues in mind, body, and soul. And whatever you're lacking at the time is probably the thing you're gravitating the most towards. And I certainly was. So because I had such we'll call it fucked up life, like, depression, anxiety, autoimmunity, uh, arthritis, pain all over the place, obesity. I had all these things that are just what most typical people are dealing with. And so I set out and just studied each one of them. A lot of those are covered in great depth at the Czech Institute, but a lot of them are just kind of glossed over. And so I really dug in and studied that stuff, and I was really just blown away by psychology. Psychology really, really got my attention. And physiology, healing back pain and joint pain, and doing that through posture and kinesiology, movement as medicine. And I've just been, I don't know, for the last 7-10 years, just obsessed with learning everything I can about the nature of the human design, and the mind body soul complex, and how the synergy just works. And so yeah, I would say that I was drawn to the subject because of my own experience of being let down by the medical profession, and finding the actual truth and putting it in play, and actually utilizing the concepts and the work that's entailed to get it done. The results were just unbelievable. It's so hard to put it into a believable story, the amount of healing and recovery and rehabilitation that you're able to experience when you drop your dogmatic beliefs and you are able to accept the truth and be your own, like you said, be your own physician, be your own mechanic, be your own teacher. And sometimes that involves, to teach yourself, you have to assume the student role sometimes. And so just be open to realize that you are your best guide in life. You might have to go hire a guide in a particular area of your life to help you understand how to best navigate and incorporate and integrate that into your life to be your best self. But once you got it, you got it. Trust yourself, be your own guide, be your own coach, be your own mentor, and love yourself enough to do what's best for yourself when you need to do it.
Yeah, it's kind of it's so rare. Yeah, I mean, what you said is totally on point, but I find it's so, especially the more overweight the person is, the more rare it becomes, just to even get them to admit that they even have enough money, like for coaching or organic food or stuff of that sort. But it's like I mean, it takes a tremendous amount of money, time, and effort to make yourself overweight. People like don't know that, but I mean, you got to like buy all this processed food consistently for many decades, go out and eat at these fast food places consistently. You got to force yourself to do that. And then
Yeah.
you got to kind of look in the mirror every morning, not like what you see, but kind of spin the story in some way to get you to keep doing what you don't want to be doing. And then believe that you do want to be doing it in some weird and twisted acrobatic roller coaster type story event going on here and stuff of that sort. And so it takes a lot of money, time, and effort to become overweight. It's a tremendous amount of effort, actually. And I would tell, like people like, oh, start off with, buying some books and taking this like course, which may be like $500 or $700. I tell people to take at least HLC 1. I think that's like a great starting place for pretty much all Americans at the moment, and just kind of really master that material. And I don't know the price of it right now, but I think it was like $500 to $600 or something like that, the online version. And I'm like, dude, if you just like really master that stuff, you'll be solid. And like, oh, I don't have that money. And I look over their finances and I'm like, dude, like you're spending $8,000 to $16,000 a year on non-essential expenses like eating out, and all this other bullshit, and they're like, I don't have that money. I'm like, right there, you do have that money. You're spending the money on there, but they're still like, oh, I just don't have the money, It's like so crazy to me, like how like delusional, and how many of these intertwined like pathological stories and lies that have been embedded as a mind virus in this person. I'm like, dude, like you just told me you eat out like 3 or 4 times a week and you do these little trips here and there. If you add up the total, it's a bare minimum of 8,000 a year, like no American is spending less than 8,000 a year on non-essential expenses. And that's like usually way more than a lot of coaching programs or a lot of courses online, or definitely for sure books, especially used books on Amazon are like $2 or $3, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Um, I'm like, dude, what the fuck are you even thinking?
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
it's hard for me to even look at them like in a serious way at that point, you know, of how lost and confused they are.
yeah, I think someone in that situation, they're not thinking. Yeah, they're feeling, and a lot of, and feeling's great, but a lot of what they're doing is coping mechanisms, and that's what they're spending the non-essential money on, is the things that make them feel better because of the pain that they're in, because of the health that they're in, or the life situation that they have. And so they're spending the money on vacations, they're spending the money on going out, they're spending the money on alcohol, they're spending the money on streaming services or what have you. And not that any of those are inherently bad, they
Mm-hmm.
can all have someone's healthy life, but how much time are you investing feeling bad? How much time are you investing not being comfortable? How much time are you investing not sleeping well? How much time are you investing not liking what you see in the mirror right before you hop in the shower? How much time are you investing in all of that? And how much money would it be worth to you to get rid of that? Because you're spending, I don't know, $5,000, $10,000 to go to Hawaii because you hate your job and you can't wait for your vacation and you don't feel good most of your day and you don't like what you see in the mirror. And so I can understand why Hawaii makes you feel better. But what if you just skipped one Hawaii vacation, so the next time you go to Hawaii, you can strut around the beach with your shirt off? You know what to order when you go out to eat, so that the next day you don't feel like total crap. You got a food hangover, an alcohol hangover. What would it be worth for all of that to go away in this new state of being, this new experience, and everything you do to be incorporated into your life? What would that be worth to you when you're totally willing to spend $15,000 a year on things that just make you feel better as an escape from the things that you're feeling now that you don't want to feel?
Yeah, just it's like sugar highs at best, like at best, and that's
At
it.
best, at best. And these people go on vacation, and I'm saying this because I was there. I've got pictures of me in Cabo, in Cancun, and like it's almost embarrassing to look at those pictures now. But here I am spending this money to go on this vacation to escape from this life that I didn't like, and I'm ashamed to take my shirt off to jump in the ocean. We actually didn't go to the ocean as much as I would like to go because I didn't like the way I looked. Half Over half the vacation was not enjoyable because the foods I was choosing to eat, the alcohol I was choosing to drink, was creating such a physiological state that I don't care where you are, it's not enjoyable. And then some of the things that would have made me feel better, like moving, getting into the ocean, walking along the beach, I wasn't doing because I didn't want to go take my shirt off.
Yeah, and I found also just with these kind of gray area purchases, sometimes you see like a person that's really struggling with their health tremendously. And let's just say hypothetically, it's because of like an overwhelming job schedule. I see this quite often. And the second they have some like extra money and stuff of that sort, they kind of make a big house purchase. That's kind of the next thing to do. Now they're locked in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's
Yes.
like no escape from that unsustainable work schedule and stuff of that sort. And instead of kind of using that extra money to, I don't know, maybe buy like a fourplex and rent out like one like the units and live in the other one so you can live for free basically. And on top of that, maybe establishing like a minimalist lifestyle, a health conscious lifestyle, which is way cheaper and way more beneficial than an over consumerism type of lifestyle with filled with a lot of processed food and materialistic junk. They're like, they make this house purchase and it's kind of like a victory. They even posted on Facebook and I'm like, hey, check me out. I'm like 80 pounds overweight and almost dead, but I finally got my house. Now I for sure have to keep in the environment that led to all these pathologies for the next 20 years. But I got this house because that's the next big thing to do,
Yeah.
for adults.
That's what
And I'm
I'm
like,
supposed to do.
dude, this is where American propaganda has tricked people into believing what is important
Yes.
is not important,
Yes.
and what is not important is important. And it's so sad to see because you see this. I mean, walk outside, like you're in a completely different state than me. You can walk outside right now, outside of your car. 9 out of 10 people you run into are full of obesity, misery, and disease. I can do the same thing in completely the other side of the whole country, and you'll see the same exact fucking thing.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And, it's people that don't live here or that used to live here, they live abroad and they come back and visit or whatever. They're just blown away. They're blown away. I mean, I was talking to some guy a couple months back and where's he live in Nicaragua. And he says, man, I almost forget. I come back to the States and it's just like, you walk into the airport and you're like, oh my gosh. He says, it's just shocking. It is just shocking. And we've just excused it away. And to your point, we're doing the thing that we think we need to do. And that is kind of like a theme, it's like, I got to buy a house. I got to raise. So I'm going to get a new car, got to raise. So I'm going to get a bigger house. But the fact remains, this is the cold hard truth. It doesn't matter if you are rich or if you are broke, if you are miserable. And it doesn't matter if you are rich or you are broke, if you are happy. And at the end of the day, what does everybody want? They want their health and they want their happiness. They might want peace, but really it's like, that's what everybody wants. What are you pursuing anything for? Because it's going to fulfill you. You think we want to be fulfilled, we want to be happy, and we want to be healthy.
Yeah, and I think like honestly, like part of a health journey, at least a part of it, it's not going to be the whole thing, should be figuring out a way how to escape the rat race of materialism. You know,
Yes. Yeah.
that for sure has to be one of the variables, because right now the rat race is not sustainable mentally or physically in any conceivable way at
No.
all. So if you continue to stay there and you continue to be a dummy and keep buying stuff to kind of fit in with, that's what you're supposed to do because society is doing it. But hey, society is mentally and physically ill. So why the fuck would you follow their example?
Yeah.
First off, you know,
Yep.
if you follow their path, you'll get their results, and their results are just freaking terrible. And
Mm-hmm.
you got to try, like, in my opinion, like a new path. And it may not work out too, but the path that everyone else is doing is 100% not working,
Yeah.
for sure. So you already know you're pretty much a failure at that point. And
Yeah.
because it's unsustainable. And it's too bad that the American dream has become that way, because it didn't used to be this way. You know what I mean? But now it's like 100% unsustainable, like with the way things are going in any direction, from agriculture to manufacturing to the trillions of dollars the country has accumulated with debt. Robert Kiyosaki said the average person has less than $1,000 to their name. So now
Yeah.
they're full of health problems, plus don't have any finances to fall back on. And the number one reason for personal bankruptcy in the US, which accounts for close to 80% of all bankruptcies, are health issues. That's like the absolute worst recipe for disaster.
Yeah. Yep. It's a ticking time bomb. It's a ticking time bomb. And I think we know that in our heart, we know that in our unconscious mind, we know that in our subconscious mind, but our conscious mind has been programmed with what we need to do to be accepted into society, to be viewed properly into society, to make our parents happy, to fit in, you name it, fill in the blank. But we're trying to make people happy that, as you said, are sick and miserable. We're trying to fit in and get approval from people that are sick and miserable. We're trying to keep up with people that are sick and miserable. And at some point, your health will be your top priority. At some point in your life, it might be the very last day when you're laying on the deathbed. It might be 20 years before you pass and you get that very first doctor visit that says you got fill in the blank disease. We're going to give you fill in the blank drug. And then that's when the process starts, and they have no timeline to get you off the drug, or if you do this and make these changes, you're going to come off the drug. That's not it. You're just set. The wheels are set in motion. The wheels are set in motion.
Yeah. And I mean, my mom is visiting, so I got to go pretty soon,
Okay.
Jerry. But, I could talk to you, go on rants with you for like 30 hours at a time. I don't think Facebook storage will be able to handle our actual podcast here. But I think like also like misery breeds misery,
Mm-hmm.
because miserable and obese people buy like the worst processed food, which require factory and industrial agriculture, which kill the soils, enslave, like, and just like Holocaust camp factory farms. I mean, they look exactly like Holocaust camp, these poor animals
Yeah.
that are completely miserable. And then you eat the flesh of these miserable and sick animals and wonder why you're miserable and sick yourself. The same with the plants, all monocrop, heavy amounts of biocides thrown on that soil, destroying the soil food web, all the poor insects and all the pollinators that keep our planet alive. And then it goes right back to destroying your health again, you know, with that shit food and those unsustainable schedules and all those nasty, nasty medical drugs. It's just like a nasty, destructive cycle of obesity, misery, and disease that then unfortunately spreads like a plague and virus throughout the whole entire planet.
Becomes normalized, becomes the baseline.
Yeah. And then they're like, well, we need more chemicals, more medical drugs, more of what doesn't work. I'm like, dude, let's just step back and use common fucking sense again, you know?
Yeah.
And
I mean, we've got Bill Gates as a
health advisor.
I mean, come on.
Guy that looks like a melted ice cream cone.
Like, you want to ask me if I'm a doctor? That guy didn't even graduate college. Neither did I. Right?
Yeah, but remember,
if you have the whole world on health.
But remember, if you have billions, all of a sudden you're smart enough to speak on any subject,
all
according to the general American mindset. You know.
Yeah. Yep, totally.
Also,
totally.
Jerry, I just feel like you have to create impressive word salads. And people love those and hypnotized by those fancy, like, scientific. I'm trying to, like, purposely, Einstein always said the actual master practitioner is the one that could take a complicated subject and explain it in extremely simple terms.
Yes.
Coming from Einstein himself, okay, one of the legends here in the scientific fields. And people are just so gullible when it comes to those fancy word salads and white coats and, hey, I'm a scientist from Stanford, but I do drugs and stuff of that sort myself. And you know what I mean? It's like, dude, it's like blind leading the blind. And unfortunately, a lot of people in the health profession are sick themselves, you know? They have a lot of fitness influencers on blasting God knows how many, like, steroids. Then you have a bunch of weight loss MDs that are sick and haggard looking themselves and living unsustainable schedules themselves, taking on way too many clients and patients and way too much staff that they need to support and stuff of that sort. And it's like, dude, if like the healthcare professionals that do it for a profession can't even do it themselves, like how the fuck are people that are hiring them going to fucking do it?
Well, yeah, I mean, here's the kind of funny part of that is the disease management system has nothing to do if there's no disease. So it doesn't surprise me at all that the people that are actually indoctrinated into that system are creating diseases themselves because, like you said, it's the beliefs, it's the mind virus, it's the identities formed from all of that create who you become and what you end up doing. And so they've had that mind virus implanted to the deepest part of their brain. And so, of course, they're going to follow that faulty logic. Of course, they're going to follow that path themselves. And of course, they're going to find themselves in a state of disease. Because just because they're working for the system doesn't mean that they can't be a part of the system. You know, the system can't have anybody left out. So, yeah, of course, they're going to manifest disease because if there's no disease and if there's no disease, the disease management system has no.
You had to holler.
Yeah.
That was an instinctual like impulse trigger, like No, you guys, I'm just look, Jerry and I are just trying to help you with honest answers. They're not easy to follow. That's where you lose a lot of people because it's going to require so much change and so much education on your part. But it's unfortunately just what you have to do. And if you want real change and to escape your life of misery, obesity, and disease, it's just what needs to be done. And there is no workaround, no quick magic pill, no, like, I just need this one quick fitness tip off TikTok, and then all of a sudden my problems would all disappear. All of them, not just one of them, all of them. In fact, the whole world's problems will disappear if I follow this quick TikTok link and stuff of that sort. It's just not going to happen that way. And if it could, if it would actually work, like, why are you still all fucked up?
Yeah.
You know, that's my question. You got to be honest with yourself too. There are times, and Jerry and I are giving you this information because we spent so many years wasting time going from one practitioner to another, you know what I mean? Getting bullshit advice and money. And it's extremely expensive too. Because even if you have insurance, you still got to pay the deductible. You know, that's like a few K a year before the insurance actually kicks in full throttle. And you're still paying for that insurance monthly too. People forget that. You're still making those hundreds of dollars payments monthly. So it's not like it's free. And we didn't find any solutions. And that's pretty much all of America, because if that model did really work, 9 out of 10 Americans right now wouldn't be full of obesity, misery, and disease and not metabolically healthy, which is an honest statistic. I'm not even making that up. With close to probably 2 million Americans dying annually from preventable deaths in one way or another. And then, 400K of those coming just from pharmaceutical and medical malpractice, et cetera, which is the third leading cause of death in the US. And even if they don't die, I mean, like, the quality of their life is so damn poor. It's like, what's the point then? What's the point of continuing that way? It's not serving anyone around you, not serving, the world, because you're relying on all this processed food and junk and chemicals, which is destroying the planet too. And not serving anyone around you, especially if you have kids, then you're setting that example for your kids. And 80% of what they learn, I don't even have kids, I'm just using this statistic from what I've read, but 80% of what they learn from what I read is how they see you acting, not even from what you tell them. So if they see you working yourself to death and very overweight and not setting healthy boundaries in life, they're going to do the same thing. And if it's not serving you, like, how the hell is it going to serve them?
Yep.
So.
Yep, exactly. And that's why you got to be your own leader. You got to be your own coach. You got to be your own guide eventually, because you've been programmed by people. And I was just in the gym locker room, just getting out of the sauna, and there's this guy, and he was in there with this kid, and he was like barking at the kid because they had this lotion in the in the gym locker room, and the kid didn't want to put the lotion on, but the dad was just like, put some damn lotion on, you're gonna dry up your skin, and I'm like,
well, Jerry, he didn't have his daily dose of cancer-causing chemicals.
yeah,
He needs
exactly.
those on his skin that all absorb into your bloodstream eventually, or a large percentage of it absorbs, rather.
Yeah, I just wanted to hop on the stage and go, hydration starts from within, and
yeah. That's like, dude,
anything that you wouldn't drink, you should put it on your skin, and da 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 da. But here's this kid is just listening to his own inner guide. The inner guide's like, no, I don't want any of that shit.
Yeah.
And he's getting
like, that reminds me of that story when I tried to feed my dog Beyond Burgers. I actually ate one and just gave it to him just to see it. They don't eat it. They don't eat that shit. They know it's like shit, dude.
Dog would
no, it wouldn't eat it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it would just like sniff around on it and just like instantly walk away. They're like, no, I'm not that dumb to eat this. And imagine this, doc. So the dog, ironically, doesn't have a nutrition degree, but knows better than most nutritionists that do have a fucking degree. It's like, there's even a popular registered dietitian that's a cancer specialist that's saying, don't buy organic food on TikTok right now. And she has like 800,000 followers. And that's her main thing, like, don't buy organic food. She's quite overweight herself, ironically, but she doesn't understand the difference between real organic and industrial organic. And unfortunately, she never will. But just to give you, like Paul Chek once said, if you go to a nutrition convention, it should be retitled an obesity convention.
Yeah.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
Like, dude, 80% of the people you see there are like overweight. Same with medical conventions.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, it is an obese, it's like a sickness convention. Like, here, come see sick people in their natural habitat, and kind of observe what they do and how they think and how they interact and stuff of that sort. It's like such a clown circus, dude. It's like ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, shoot, the big food pyramid is processed foods, so that tells you all you need to know. We know, but I guess everybody doesn't know. But the food industry, the medical industry, they're all holding hands. And they're marching forward with more or less the same mission: keep people consuming, keep people addicted, keep people working, keep people consuming, and eventually they'll create a disease, and we won't worry about the person. We'll just treat the disease, and that'll be more money in the pockets of pharma, more money in the pockets of the food manufacturers, who have lobbyists that dump out a bunch of money, just like the pharmaceutical industry. So that's why it's confusing, and that's why we're sicker than we've ever been. There's nothing about it that needs to be confusing, and there's nothing about your life and your day that says you have to live it in a state of obesity, misery, or disease. It doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, regarding the commercial aspect of that, recently they actually built a weight loss clinic about a block away from me. And get this, Jerry, on the same block, on one side, there's a Sonic's. On the other side, there's a Cane's, a Pizza Hut, and a Dunkin's donut. Dunkin' Donuts. And get this, on the far corner of that same plaza, there's a Dutch Bros, which sells a bunch of fruity,
Yeah.
like basically high sugar drinks and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
And a block away from that, there's a weight loss surgery clinic. I'm like, dude,
Wow.
they're like fucking not
Perfect.
giving these people like any hope or chance of actually getting better at all.
No.
And when I saw that, I even took a picture. I don't know if I sent it to you. I had to take a picture because I'm like, dude, this is fucking American healthcare 101 in this one block. It explains the whole entire American healthcare system
Yep.
in this one block.
Yep.
That's it. And I'm like, this is perfect. You know,
of hope. We'll keep you a little bit of hope, a lot of illness, and zero healing. And we don't want you to die. We'll keep you just barely alive.
Yeah, and people forget that you know, medical drugs don't cure or prevent anything. You know,
no, they do not. You cannot add like you said earlier. You know, the body's a synergistic system, and synergy does best. You know, is going to create the best product, the best result when all components within the system are firing and adding to the synergistic nature of what is being created. You can't just throw a chemical into that system and create synergy. You're going to disrupt synergy every single time. You're going to you might alleviate a certain symptom, but you're going to add physiological load to the other systems, which is going to decrease the synergy. And more to the point, that symptom was telling you where you should look and start following that thread back, tracing that thread back to where it started. That's what it's telling you. It's giving you a message. It is a gift. Pain is a gift. Symptoms are a gift. They say, hey, look, this is what you can fix if you don't want to die early. This is what you can fix if you don't want to create more disease and more dysfunction in your life. If you trace this back and heal it, you're likely to alleviate disease in the future. But instead, we mask it, we cover it up, and we're shocked when we create new symptoms.
Yeah, and it's like I mean, you mentioned high blood pressure a few times. It's like, dude, okay, like you have high blood pressure and you take a high blood pressure medication, you may actually suppress your blood pressure, but that same belief system that led to the blood pressure is going to lead to a myriad of physical and mental health challenges throughout your life. So if you continue down that path and don't listen to what Jerry mentioned is like the pain teacher and what it's really trying to show you and teach you, and you kind of numb yourself out into oblivion, get ready for a life of misery, obesity, and disease, and spending probably eventually, you know, 10 to 14,000 a year on medical expenses and still not getting better. I'm sorry, you're just not. I've never seen personally anyone fucking get better with that model.
No,
yes, there's some like extreme, like I foolishly jumped in some river in Hawaii one time and got an ear infection that quickly spread to my jaw. I did take antibiotics for that for like a week. It was the lowest dose and it actually did go away, and they put some steroid drops in my ear too. And it was gnarly. Like I couldn't even open my jaw like the second day, you know, that's how fast it spread.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in those rare situations, for sure, you know, those medical emergency type situations, yeah, I mean, you're going to need emergency medicine, but that's where medicine really shines, you know?
Yeah.
But 95% of what you're seeing on the street today is not, it's a lifestyle disorder. It's a mental disorder that's leading, it's kind of normalized mental and physical pathology that's leading to everything, pretty much everything we're seeing today, you know, explosion in cancers, cardiovascular diseases of various sorts, random skin issues that never go away, or digestive issues, or whatever. I mean,
yeah,
the encyclopedia is long with that. So.
Yep. Exactly. And a lot of those can be traced back to the same root cause, which is right up in here. What's going on up in there, and what's that creating within you that is undesirable, and you might as well just pull that thread and trace it back to where it started. Do it now. There's no sense in waiting. There's no sense in thinking that anything you've heard that's the truth isn't the truth, and the magic answer hasn't been discovered yet. It's been discovered long ago.
Mm-hmm.
It never went away. So yeah.
Yeah, and as Maharaj would say, like, change can only happen in the now, never in the future.
Right.
You know,
exactly.
It's pretty powerful. And especially like if you're 40 plus, I mean, come on, guys, wake up, you know? Like, when are you going to do it? Like 50, 60, 70? If you're like 50 already, come on. Stop bullshitting yourself. Do it already, man.
Yeah.
Put yourself first. Stop putting your mental and physical health second all the time. You know, wake up.
Yeah.
Stop normalizing pathology in your life.
Yep.
And I mean that in the absolute best way because it's oftentimes what you need to hear and it's going to help you long term, you know?
Yeah.
Come on, there's a better life out there. But Jerry, I can go on with these rants. I didn't even bring coffee today, you know? I just brought a kombucha. I'm lucky. I'm glad I actually didn't because it could have gone on quite a long time, you know? But honestly, I got my mom visiting here and I want to kind of spend as much time with her as possible.
Sounds good, bro.
But always, it's great to see you,
Always.
man. And yeah, I mean, we'll hang out again in person sometime soon.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You can come out to Montana. Come see me.
yeah, no, I will eventually. Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
soon.
Yeah.
So once I finish this house project, it should be this weekend.
Okay.
I'm working on it with my mom here. Then yeah, I'll kind of think about coming up there. Maybe I could visit Michigan State at the same time and go visit that professor I've been working with.
There you go.
But you guys, thanks for coming in. I know I get sometimes a little hot-headed with this subject, but just because it's just so sad to see how the American dream has become kind of like a nightmare for the most part for most people, you know? And it doesn't need to be that way. This is such a great country, especially if you've traveled in a lot of places in the world. I mean, it's kind of like a complete mess in a tremendous amount of places. There's so much potential here and so many great people, but we have to stop normalizing a system that normalizes mental and physical illness and start relying on real healthcare. Enough of this medical drug dealing bullshit, you know? It doesn't serve anyone. It just lines the pockets of a very select few minor people at the expense of a tremendous amount of people. And we can do better. And unfortunately, right now, you just have to become your own mechanic because no one's gonna really care about you as much as you care about yourself first and foremost. No one's gonna know you exactly how you know yourself. And you're on your own, unfortunately, but hopefully we're providing you good roadmaps and blueprints of what has worked for Jerry and I. And I've been in shape for quite a long time, you know, been able to sustain it drug-free and stuff of that sort. And it works, but unfortunately it only works if you work and are ready to change, you know? And if you're not, then unfortunately you're going to continue the path until something really dramatic happens. And then you'll learn the hard way. And then hopefully you will change then. But until then, I wish you guys the best of course, wishing you guys the absolute best. Jerry, it's good to see you again and wishing you guys a good weekend, okay?
All right. Thanks, Eugene. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Bye.
All right. See you.
Thanks for tuning into the podcast. If you've ever had trouble losing weight, or you've lost weight, but still didn't have the ideal body or health you're aiming for, please feel free to reach out anytime and book an assessment. Eugene will work with you to cover your goals in detail, see what's holding you back, and go from there. In the meantime, feel free to check out the countless testimonials on Eugene's website in the link below. In the testimonial section, you'll notice everyone has various backgrounds, are of all different ages, and all have had different challenges in their life, but they all have one thing in common: they were all able to find their health and achieve their ideal body. You're also welcome to add yourself to the Facebook group in the link below. There you'll have access to the live videos that Eugene does weekly on Sundays, and other helpful content. Thank you again for tuning in.